Last year, I made a video on different options folks had for dual-screen hardware for emulation. In 2024, that amounted to a lot of older Android phones and tablets, some DIY solutions, and the one dual-screen Windows handheld on the market. Since then, dual-screen hardware and emulation has entered a bit of a renaissance. 4 dual-screen handhelds have launched within the past few months. At least one manufacturer started experimenting with stretch displays, and Retroid's dual-screen add-on has made proper dual-screen play a lot more accessible than before. For dual-screen emulation fans, there have never been quite as many options available. As a result, you might be asking which one's actually worth your time and money. And unfortunately, that answer's a bit complicated. Anyone you find making one singular recommendation to apply for everyone out there is really just communicating a personal preference. The best device for you is going to depend on what kind of emulation you want to use the device for, your budget for a handheld, and general aesthetic preference. All current devices have their own flaws and trade-offs that'll hit differently for different people. With that in mind, let's step through a few common goals folks might have for these handhelds to give you some perspective on different handhelds' strengths and see if any click with your specific needs. If you see one that looks interesting, I'll have store links in the video description alongside my dedicated reviews for more in-depth coverage. First, let's start with what's probably the most common goal out there. Someone who mostly plays single-screen games occasionally wants a second screen. These folks would like comfortable DS, 3DS, and Wii U on demand, and might toss up a video or web browser every once in a while. But a second screen will likely go unused more often than not, because they mostly play Switch, Steam, and retro console games. For those folks, getting a clamshell dual-screen handheld with a permanent fixed display, like an AYN Thor or Ayaneo Pocket DS, is probably unnecessary. Instead, they'd either want a device with a display that can be detached or folded back. Among current options, Retroid's dual-screen add-on is probably the best bet. This $70 clip-on display is purpose-built for Retroid's various horizontal handhelds, but also works well on many other systems with minimal tinkering. Odin handhelds in particular have been pointed out as very good alternatives. I've personally had a great time using it with my Steam Deck. It's not the perfect size for proper touch controls and won't fit over my kill switch case without modification, but it's great for casual DS, 3DS, and Wii U gameplay where the touchscreen isn't the center of gameplay. If you already have an Android handheld or handheld PC that you enjoy using, the Retroid dual screen's a great option to give you dual screens when you want it and get out of the way when you don't. Meanwhile, if you don't have a handheld at all, the add-on's explicitly compatible with handhelds as cheap as the $140 Retroid Pocket 4. That tends to make it the cheapest entry point to proper dual-screen emulation with new hardware. The only downsides to note are that, well, first and foremost, it's a USB-C display with no internal battery. If a handheld can't output video via USB-C while powering the display, it's just not going to work. Secondly, Retroid rotated the display by default to accommodate quirks with their own handhelds. That's not an issue for handheld PCs, since Linux and Windows have built-in settings to rotate displays. It does become an issue for non-Retroid Android handhelds though, since Android doesn't have built-in settings for external display rotation. As a workaround, there's a community-made script available via GitHub to force that rotation. It works great, but does require the handheld to be able to run a script as root, which won't be an option in all handhelds. If you're thinking of buying the add-on for an Android handheld not made by Retroid or AYN within the past couple years, I'd recommend doing additional research first. Of course, if you'd rather skip all that jank in favor of something more integrated, the One Sugar Sugar One might be of interest. The Sugar One's a modern 2DS-like experience with great performance. Both displays also have about the same physical height, which leads to a fairly natural DS and 3DS gameplay experience without a ton of fiddling. When not in use, the smaller display folds out of the way for a single-screen experience similar to a smartphone in a bespoke telescopic grip. All of which is backed by a Snapdragon G3 Gen 3 processor, which can comfortably handle any use cases I throw at it within Android's current limits. The grips are comfortable, it's loaded with fun dual-screen ideas and interesting clicky buttons, and the build quality feels unexpectedly premium. I love the heck out of this quirky handheld and find it a worthwhile way to balance folks' gaming needs. Its main downside is just that it's, well, very expensive. At $700, it's more expensive than many handheld PCs, and will likely fall outside folks' budgets or price range for reasonable purchases. However, if you're really dedicated to having a dual-screen Android handheld with a newer chipset that feels natural for single-screen gaming, and the dual-screen add-on seems a bit too ad hoc, the Sugar One might be worth at least considering. Next, let's talk compactness. For some folks, a device is only worth considering if it fits within whatever pockets they happen to be wearing. Naturally, that immediately rules out devices like the dual-screen add-on or Sugar One. At the same time, even with a device like the Magic X040 or Anbernic RGDS being compact enough, they may not have the level of performance to satisfy folks' needs. Luckily, performant and compact is exactly the niche filled by the AYM4. At about the size of a new 3DS XL, it's easy to slip the Thor into all but the smallest of pockets. For DS and 3DS gameplay, it has decent feeling controls and will likely satisfy most folks' dual-screen emulation needs. The downsides? Well, sharp edges, flat bottoms, and awkward triggers don't make it the most comfortable handheld. The small bottom display is also not proportional to the large top display, making 3DS gameplay feel less than ideal. In many ways, it's a device that prioritizes compactness over everything else. That might not jive with everyone, but if you are looking for a very compact device that's also performant enough to handle DS and 3DS emulation, it might be perfect for you. Just be aware that, like the other dual-screen handhelds this year, it's not quite cheap. At about $310 to $460, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 models cost about as much as a low-end handheld PC. There is a $260 model with a Snapdragon 865 processor that seems like a better deal, but as of recording, it's been unavailable to purchase for quite some time. If the Thor's small screens aren't quite what you're looking for, the Surface Duo line offers a similar compact experience with much better displays for dual-screen emulation. Duos have a similar footprint while being much thinner. They feel about as ergonomic as a smartphone, come with a bit more polished software, and can be modified with whatever flavor of telescopic controller you find comfortable. They also have bigger, dual 4x3 displays with built-in digitizers for active stylus support. In terms of gameplay comfort, it's pretty much night and day to what the Thor offers. And honestly, if your goal is to just have the best possible DS emulation experience, often even compared to original hardware, it's hard to do better than a Surface Duo 1. Other proper handhelds may be more performant or come with better cooling, but Microsoft's two attempts at dual-screen hardware often blow these other options out of the water in terms of displays and software. The displays feel much more comfortable and better balanced than any other handheld in this video. Touchscreen only and book-style DS games especially shine here. Over the years, I've often randomly gotten lost in Meteos sessions because the displays are so comfortable to read and Surface Pens allow for such precise selections. Now, obviously, with these being tablets, there aren't any physical controls, unless you feel like remapping volume keys. Touchscreen controls do work fine for slower-paced games like Pokemon titles, if you don't mind giving up some screen real estate. However, faster-paced games will require also buying a telescopic grip for the best experience. I've been a huge fan of GameSir's X2 controller, but realistically, folks going the Duo route will have freedom to go with whatever controls fit their taste and budget. I'll leave a few in the video description for reference. In terms of performance, the Snapdragon 855 in the Surface Duo 1 is more than enough for solid DS games. There are some current oddities with MelonDS's OpenGL rendering, but Drastic makes MelonDS mostly unnecessary to use anyway. As for downsides, the main one is that the Duo 1 is 5 years old at this point, and it's still kind of pricey. Here in the US, devices can be found in working condition on eBay for around $300. Add in a $50 telescopic controller, and they're at or above the price of some other options that released this year. If you'd like a bit more performance than the 855, the Duo 2 is also a much better machine. With its Snapdragon 888 and more premium design, it's a better emulator that feels much better to use overall. Unfortunately, it also sells for twice as much and has an audio delay issue in certain gaming apps that require connecting Bluetooth headphones to fix. Still, if your goal is to have the best possible DS emulation experience, I've yet to find anything better than either of the Surface Duos. Now, for 3DS gaming, you can definitely do better though. Don't get me wrong, the Duo 1, even with its 6-year-old chipset, is surprisingly competent at 3DS emulation. 3DS emulators' continued development over the past couple years has really taken 3DS emulation on the Duo 1 from kinda awkward to fairly reasonable at up to 2x resolution. It's just that dual 4x3 displays aren't the best fit for 3DS aspect ratios. Plus, a lack of active cooling can also lead to either Duo becoming a bit warm during long play sessions. Obviously, the other options I've mentioned thus far, including the Sugar One, Thor, and Steam Deck Plus add-on, will have better 3DS performance. But they also either don't quite have the right display aspect ratios or don't feel the most comfortable for more than short bursts of gameplay. That's where the Ioneo Pocket DS comes in. Unlike the Sugar One or Thor, the Pocket DS's bottom display is a much larger 4x3 display. That, paired with a larger 16:9 top display of almost the same height and a Snapdragon G3X Gen 2 processor, make for the best looking 3DS emulation among the bunch. While not quite as compact as the Thor or Duo line, it uses the extra space for larger displays and comfortable grips made from soft plastic. The shell has rounded corners to prevent it from digging into my hands while gripping, and, well, it's a handheld that I've often used for hours on end without fatigue or hand cramping. It's a fantastic, comfortable gameplay experience, top to bottom, that really sells the idea of a modern 3DS better than just about any other non-Nintendo dual-screen device I've used thus far. Now, there are two potential roadblocks. The first is that the Pocket DS ranges in price from $400 to $500. That's not exactly cheap for an Android handheld, and will likely sit above most folks' budgets. Second, Ioneo's initial manufacturing caused many of their bottom displays to have noticeable light bleed. For such a pricey handheld, that might be an understandable deal breaker for some folks. Although, I will say that while my unit does show light bleed, it's only visible on almost all black images and doesn't really impact gameplay. I mostly forget it's there. Still, your mileage may vary, and it's worthwhile bringing it up to consider during the purchasing process. If you're looking for a handheld to emulate 3DS games these days, it's hard to do better, but there are some caveats to the actual hardware itself. That sentiment extends to Wii U gameplay as well. The size of the bottom display is just enough to really make a good gamepad view usable. It'd be hard for a manufacturer to make a device feel better than what's here without making this clamshell much larger. The roadblock here is that Cemu for Android it's still a work in progress. For many of the most popular Wii U games, performance is great with the Pocket DS's chipset. For some other games, well, not so much. Right now, it's a nice bonus, but not the primary reason to buy a dual-screen Android handheld. Instead, if your main focus is Wii U, you'll want to go with something Linux or Windows-based. Steam Decks are great options, especially when paired with a USB-C monitor or Retroid's dual-screen add-on. The need to bolt a second display is kinda cumbersome, but the performance is excellent for 720p gameplay. Unsurprisingly, it plus a display will also cost less than my top-spec Pocket DS. Alternatively, if you don't care about price, there's also the Pocket DS's Windows-based sibling, the Flip 1S DS. It has a similar size, shape, and controls. It just runs Windows, has some slight shifts to button position, swaps a 4x3 bottom display for a 3x2 display, and has many more dual-screen capabilities. Its AMD Ryzen AI 9 HX370 should be more than enough to run any dual-screen system as best as you could possibly need it in a handheld form factor. Even my original Flip DS from last year accomplished that, so expect the One SDS to be a bit overkill at times. The main downside for these will just be availability and price. I've received emails from Ioneo in the past signaling limited quantities of their Flip devices. That's also likely the reason why their cheapest models are unavailable. Right now, $1,300 is the base price for one of these systems. As much as I dig the form factor, $1,000+ for a handheld is a bit much to recommend. Still, for those who don't know the meaning of a budget, there's no device you can buy right now that'll really beat it, unless you opt for a full-size dual-screen laptop. Before wrapping up this video, it's also worthwhile to discuss some older dual-screen devices that I wouldn't recommend first these days, but might fit random folks' needs given the right price or opportunity. First up, there are two 2020 smartphones that offer a surprisingly good dual-screen emulation experience: the LG V60 and ROG Phone 3. The LG V60 launched with a dual-screen case that doubles its screen real estate. With the help of the LG Wide Mode app, it's a lot easier to span random apps across displays than anything released this year. Meanwhile, the Snapdragon 865 inside makes for great DS and 3DS emulation. As expected of a smartphone, it does require bringing your own telescopic controller if you don't like touch controls, but still, it's a well-made, versatile setup that still holds up 5 years later, as does the ROG Phone 3 with its twin-view dock 3. While it lacks many of the dual-screen features of many other devices, it claws back some points with an integrated fan, extra USB-C port, and slightly boosted Snapdragon 865 Plus processor. Paired with its custom Kunai 3 Joy-Con-like controllers, it feels more like a proper gaming handheld than a smartphone, albeit still a bit bulky. Before my Sugar One arrived, it was actually my favorite way to emulate 3DS games because it felt so unique with its implementation. Realistically, this year's crop of handhelds has made it mostly unnecessary to hunt down either of these devices. As good an experience as they can offer, integrated controls and more performant processors are difficult to overlook. Their rising prices also tend to only make them better deals compared to the more expensive Android handhelds available. Still, if you happen to have one of these phones lying around in a drawer somewhere, or you manage to see them for a reasonable price, maybe on eBay, they're more than worth checking out. Beyond phones, I'd also recommend considering Mechanism's $25 magnetic phone mount. For most folks these days, I'd recommend Retroid's dual screen add-on first to add a second screen to a handheld. When it's compatible with the device, the setup's much cleaner and compact with the add-on. However, there are plenty of situations where the add-on might be too small or not work quite as well. In those cases, it can still be worthwhile to just mount your phone to whatever handheld you have. Just grab a mount, add an Android phone, some cables, and a UVC app, and you have a makeshift external display that can often be better than Retroid's offering, albeit with much more cable management. Folks with folding phones will especially want to try this route. Combined with a Steam Deck-sized handheld, folding phones currently offer the best external display experience for handheld dual-screen emulation. All in all, it's a very handy solution for folks needing a bit more customization than available with Retroid's display. In summary, fans of dual-screen gaming have a ton of options these days. AYN's Thor offers an exceptionally compact handheld for those without a ton of pocket space. The Surface Duo line still sits comfortable as great DS systems, while Ioneo's Pocket DS feels like the first successful attempt at a proper 3DS-like handheld. At the same time, folks only wanting occasional dual-screen emulation can pick up Retroid's dual-screen add-on or Mechanism's phone mount to add an easily removable second screen to most handhelds. While Wii U emulation might still be more in the wheelhouse of handheld PCs, it's easier than ever to grab a modern Android device that'll feel comfortable for DS or 3DS emulation. Interest in dual screens also doesn't seem to be slowing down. With additional community software support and new design concepts on the horizon, it's possible a slew of brand new devices will make this year's list look quaint. Here's to hoping. Do you have a favorite dual screen handheld device or setup that you'd recommend to others? Or is there a device I haven't covered yet that you'd like to see me cover in the future? Let me know down in the comments. If you found this video helpful or informative, go ahead and give it a like to let me know, and then get subscribed for more dual screen hardware videos in the near future. Then go ahead and check out the video description for links to reviews for almost all the hardware mentioned in this video. I'll also throw in some telescopic controllers that I've enjoyed using for anyone attempting the smartphone or tablet route. That's going to be all for this video though. Thank you so much for watching all the way until the end. Till next time, catch you later.